All right, what is up, everybody? So, Shadow Scout 0013 here, coming in with Kylar, the Wookiee extraordinaire.
Hello, hello.
And today we're going to go over Star Wars Unlimited, the new trading card game that just came out by FFG. And we're going to go over aggression and the different leaders and the top five cards for, the aggression villainy, aggression hero, and just aggression. And we've got, one of the best people here to explain all of this. And we'll go ahead and start with Sabine and just kind of like the top leaders that are in aggression.
Yeah, so it's probably not a secret that Sabine right now is one of the best leaders in the entire game, and she happens to be an aggression leader. Um, the aggression color tends to want to be full of things like raid. It wants to attack your opponent, deal a lot of damage. Some of the cards will even deal direct damage to units or to bases. And so having a leader that does that on her card is very much well in theme, and she also comes out for cheap. So Sabine is definitely one of the top leaders. In villainy, I would say right now of the villainy aggression leaders, Darth Vader and Grand Inquisitor definitely have a place in the meta. They're not quite up there with Sabine, but they definitely can put up some results and piloted well. They can definitely hold their own. Vader probably being slightly stronger. Um, Typically, you're going to pair Vader and Sabine with Command, the green color, so that you get that command and aggression combo. It's very powerful. It also gives you access to a really good base. Energy Conversion Lab. Grand Inquisitor, on the other hand, he likes to pair with blue, Vigilance. And right now, IG and Cassian are struggling a little bit, very underrepresented. I think that good pilots can make those decks work, but they don't have. But I think you have to put a lot more time and energy into trying to make them work, as opposed to the other three leaders.
Okay. Now I know that we're going to talk about other bases at some point, but what do you think the best red base is?
I think Tarkin Town is strong enough to warrant play. So as opposed to playing a generic base, I think Tarkin Town is definitely where you're going to be at, especially if you're in a color that's taking red. A great example jumps to mind would be Leia. If you're playing Leia aggression, you want to rush your opponent down, and Tarkin Town helps clear the board so that your opponent can't trade in with your guys and allows your smaller power units, because raid is not active unless they're attacking. It allows them to kind of trade up still, so you can use your epic action on your base to help finish something off and keep your guys alive longer.
Okay. All right. So, what do you think that the top five cards for at least the aggression villainy would be?
Definitely number one to mention, and these aren't in any particular order, but it would be Death Star Stormtrooper. It is a one drop with three attack. That is going to definitely make your opponent have to think about what they're playing. He can trade up very well. You think that the one health doesn't matter, but really his job is to just throw himself into something and trade up. That one cost is also great because it allows you, if you're playing Vader, you can play him and still use Vader's ping ability on the first turn to take out a shield or to start working on some unit that has a little bit more health left on it. It's a very good card. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna
I think
say
number.
it's so good with the
Mhm.
fact that it's got the three attack and it's just one cost, and that you can do the combo of Vader after that.
Yeah, you're not going to be running it in like in Grand Inquisitor deck, obviously, because he deals two damage to your own unit, so he wouldn't survive that. Um, but Invader in particular, I mean, what's more classic than some stormtroopers next to Darth Vader, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, the other card, the next card that we should probably talk about is Imperial Interceptor. Um, sort of on brand or on theme with the red. It deals damage to something when you play it. At a 3/2 power for 4, it's a little bit under curve, but the ability to take out a threat immediately, dealing 3 damage, that doesn't deal damage back, this is just direct damage when it's played, sometimes clears the board and allows it to swing for more turns than it otherwise would have if it had to just get played and then just wait around for the next turn to start attacking. So the ability to just clean the space lane up and then still put a body in play that has at least a respectable amount of power at 3 is that 3 attack line is a pretty crucial number you'll start to see with cards that 3 is good, right? Um,
And
and
would you say that like it could technically does 6 damage for the 4 cost?
Yeah, and that's the way you kind of want to look at the card is that, it's going to get played, it's going to deal 3 damage directly. But if, like, for instance, somebody had a Fet's Fire Spray in play, which is a 5/6 unit, this is a 4 cost unit that can deal with it, right? You deal 3 immediately, and then on the following turn, you can attack it for 3, assuming that it's survived, right?
Right.
Or at the very least, it makes it so that the Fet's Fire Spray doesn't want to trade into you anymore because it's already taken 3 damage. So yeah, it's a very good curve. I think when you're playing aggression and villainy, it's an auto include for me. It's why it made it on the list.
Nice. I like it. The Interceptor's always been one of
Uh,
my
I,
favorites.
yeah. Plus, I mean, yeah, the art on that card is phenomenal. Um, Palpatine, I think, is next.
Hmm.
Correct me if I make a mistake on the order. Um, you know, he's a bomb. He's a late game bomb. He basically has overwhelming barrage built into his card. And that overwhelming barrage is an incredibly powerful ability. A 6/6 stats for 8 is definitely undercosted, but similar to the Imperial Interceptor, the fact that he deals 6 immediately when he comes out, and he can divide it amongst any number of enemy units. Sometimes that's good for plinking off shields on things and still getting some damage on priority units. Sometimes it's just, hey, that guy right there, boom, get him out of here. Put all 6 damage into a unit. And the fact that he has Overwhelm means that if he lives for the next turn, uh, even if he's trying to clear the board, he's still doing some damage to the base. So definitely a great card that you're going to want to see in the top end of your control list. Definitely something like Vader.
See, to me, it looked to me that like this one would be something you kind of skip because it's 8 for only a 6/6, but it's the overwhelm and the dealing 6 damage that really makes it stand out. Correct?
That's right. Without that, when played ability, he'd be super underwhelming. No pun intended with the overwhelm ability, but the when played dividing 6 damage amongst any number of enemy units is just too good to pass up. Oftentimes a board state will have just a few damage on a couple units, and he winds up doing a 2 for 1, 3 for 1 pretty regularly.
Nice. And it's also not stated that it's in one arena. You can do it in any arena.
He can shoot spaceships out of the sky with his little lightning fingers.
Nice. So we have Force Lightning.
Hey, what do you know? More Palpatine shooting Force Lightning. Yeah, now, this card is amazing. It's a legendary. It's the first legendary that we talked about so far. Why is it so good? It's the first line of text. Choose a unit. It loses all abilities for this phase. That alone makes this card, for me, if you're playing Aggression and Villainy, worth playing. You can turn off things like Sentinel. You can turn off effects that otherwise would be your doom, right? If they have a large unit that has overwhelm and you have a sentinel unit and you were going to die, but boom, you get rid of their overwhelm, and then now all of a sudden that unit can't attack and trample over the damage into your base. Or perhaps there's a unit that does something when it dies, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, where when he dies, he gives 2 experience tokens, and if it was to a Force unit, you draw a card. That's a lot of stuff that he does when he dies. Well, Force Lightning just says, how about just die, and then don't do anything, right? because it loses all abilities. So no when defeated, no when um, yeah, none of those on attack. They all go away. And then the ability for it to be scalable into the end game is the other reason why I really like Force Lightning. Um, 2 damage per 1 resource that you pay extra. If you control a Force unit, oftentimes winds up allowing you to spend 3 and deal the same amount of damage as a card that we'll talk about later, Open Fire, but you get the extra effect of lose all abilities. So definitely a very powerful card.
Nice. And I'm assuming that it says choose a unit. You could do that to a leader unit that hasn't deployed, but then I guess you wouldn't be able to really play the second part of that, correct?
So a unit isn't or a leader isn't a unit until it's been flipped, but it definitely can choose leaders, and oftentimes that is going to be very relevant. The fact that you can, uh, spend 5 resources to deal 8 damage to a leader, it kills basically any leader out there except for I think only 1 or 2. Like off the top of my head, I think Palpatine himself has I think 10 health, but 8 damage to a leader is phenomenal. It's going to kill a Boba. It's going to kill a Luke. It's going to kill Vader. Um, yeah,
Man, that's so
and
good.
and of course turning off the abilities. Sometimes it's uh it's all you need. If your opponent has a Sentinel and you need to get your guys to attack through that Sentinel unit, zap it for 1. It loses all abilities, and then you can attack their base.
I like it. And it's only 1 cost.
Yeah. Yeah, 1 and then an additional 1 for each 2 damage you want to do. So that the ability to be dynamic is also incredibly great. Flexibility is always a plus.
Yeah.
A little less flexible is the next card, which is still kind of in the same um, neighborhood, is Force Choke. Very classic card. If you have a Force unit, it costs only 1 because it costs 1 less. But it deals 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit, but they get to draw a card. And the reason for that is because doing 5 damage kills a lot of stuff. And doing it for 2 or 1 resource is really cheap. So it tries to be more of a tempo play. You're going to want to do that to hopefully trade up, where you're spending far fewer resources than what they spent on that unit, so that even though they got to draw a card, maybe they don't have any resources to play it, and then you're gaining a good tempo advantage. So definitely worth mentioning. Definitely makes my top cut for villainy aggression.
Nice. And I think that is the last villainy aggression. Now we're gonna have some, aggression heroic aggression.
Yep,
Okay.
heroism. Yeah, yeah. So the first card is Green Squadron A-Wing. That thing is so good. It is effectively a 3/3 while attacking. Um, Boy, do I need to say anything more than that? A 3/3 that you can play on turn 1. It's pretty good. It doesn't like to get attacked because the raid is only while it's attacking, not
Mm.
being attacked. But you're playing this card as the aggro player, and you're going to be saying 3 to base over and over and over, and it does it really really well. Um, the other counterpart of the 2-drop aggression heroism will be the next card, Sabine, as a 2/3, but has an on-attack trigger that can deal 1 damage to the defender of the base. Again, we're looking at another 2 cost, effectively a 3/3, right? Because you can deal 3 to the base or 3 to a unit. You could even do 2 to a unit and 1 to the base, which gives you a little flexibility. Um, super, super good. Ground is a little bit more of a contested arena, so Green Squadron, in my opinion, is a little bit better if it's trying to be a turn 1 play that's being hyper aggressive. But Sabine also has the occasional unique effect that she cannot be attacked, assuming that you have enough other units. So late game, sometimes she winds up getting that little extra layer of protection. But really, you're playing her for her on attack trigger.
Okay.
Which leads me into the next card, Red 3. We're talking about attacking. We're talking about raid. Well, guess what? You get more raid. Every friendly heroism unit gets raid 1. Numbered keyword stack. So if your card already had raid on it, it just adds one to that raid value. So now your green squadron A-wing on the first turn that it can attack for 4. Your Sabine can attack for 4, well 3, and then have a trigger for another 1 damage, so 4. Right. So this red 3 is a unique card like Sabine. Can't have multiples out in play, but man, once you drop this thing out there, your opponent is like, I gotta respond. They gotta do something about it. Um,
Man,
and so you're going to see a lot of Sabine decks run 3 copies of each of those 3 cards and 3 copies of the next card that we're going to talk about, which is K2SO, a 4/4 Overwhelm. The Overwhelm winds up being pretty relevant, and I'll explain why in just a second. But the fact is that when he dies, he gets to deal 3 damage to a base, or they discard a card from their hand. In a very aggressive deck, you're almost always choosing 3 to base. And the reason why Overwhelm is relevant is because Sabine likes to play green right now, and then you get to play Energy Conversion Lab, which you can use on K2SO to give him ambush. So now K2SO can be attacking the turn you play it and overwhelming right away.
nice.
Yep.
And you're
And
choosing between whether you want to do 3 damage to the player or you're choosing if they discard, not them getting to choose.
they do not get the choice. I get to choose. That's right. So that's very relevant, right? So in a game where you see they only have 1 card in their hand, and you're thinking, okay, well I can do 3 to their base now, but maybe just cleaning their hand out and making them go to the top deck. Sometimes that's going to be relevant. I think most of the time you're choosing 3 damage because that's an incredibly powerful ability. 3 damage to a base is really like a lot of resources worth. And when we get to the next card, you'll kind of understand. 3 damage to the base really is like spending an extra 2.5 to 3 resources. Um, and so that trigger when he is defeated to deal 3 damage is just such a value play for K2SO. Another neat thing I guess it's worth bringing up is that because he's unique, you can attack with him, and if he didn't die, um, and you have in his late game and you have resources, you can play a second copy of K2SO, and because they're unique, one of them must be defeated immediately, and then you can trigger the 3 damage to do extra damage to their base.
Oh, nice. So it's not like a
Yeah,
different keyword.
because
It's not like a sacrifice keyword. It is you're still defeating that unit to place another K2 in replacement.
that's right. Yeah, the
Okay,
unique keyword immediately defeats one of them until yeah, because it's got that little star next to his name. That means he's a unique unit.
right. Cool.
Um, the last card to talk about is for a cause I believe in. It's got some text on there. Long story short is almost every card in your deck is probably going to be a heroism card. And so really all this card should say is that 96% of the time or 94% of the time, deal 4 damage to the opponent's base. Very good. But what makes the card extra powerful is that you get to discard any of the revealed cards, right? So for each card revealed, that's white heroism with the white symbol, deal 1 to their base. But you get to discard any number of them. So you're rigging the top of your deck, and you're basically saying, oh, I specifically want to draw this and this. So the ability to manipulate the top of your deck and make your next turn stronger is also part of what makes this card powerful. And oftentimes what you're doing is you're just digging for another copy of the exact same card, because just dealing direct damage to the base that doesn't interact with the units, that it happens immediately, this can close games very quickly. Oftentimes the games where if you draw all 3 copies of this card, the number of times you're going to win is much higher than if you only saw it once, because of how good direct damage to base can be.
Yeah, it's like you're getting to do
Um,
damage and stack your own deck, which is just insane.
yeah, I think the stacking the deck actually winds up being stronger. In like in sort of like an analytical sense, right? Because you know that the damage is going to happen, but it's the fact that you're making your next turn that much more powerful, and you're not going to as much chance, right? So anytime you can manipulate the top of your deck to draw different things, those effects are going to have long-lasting benefits to a very skilled player who knows what to discard.
Okay.
Um, so I think we're moving into the mono red,
Yes.
mono aggression cards.
We've
Um,
got two tubes.
there, Yeah, I mean, two tubes is well. What else to say? I mean, he's much like much like the stormtrooper. You know, he's a one drop, so very efficient. You know, 4 stats for one is really high. The ability for him to on attack give a red unit raid 2 is also going to be incredibly relevant. Um, it's not always super relevant right away. That's the one thing about him, though. Uh, Definitely an honorable mention up here. You know, I think that when you get to the mono aggression cards, these are going to be a little bit on the weaker side because you are only in a single color, and so cards tend to be slightly less powerful. But he winds up, because he's a unique character, maintaining that power level.
Nice. And it's
The
not.
next card is,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say on attack, another friendly unit doesn't mean him either, so he doesn't gain that raid too, correct?
Right, yeah. Another always means literally a different unit, a different friendly unit.
Okay.
Yeah, Wolf is the next one. Saboteur is an amazing keyword, and the when played or on attack bases can't be healed for this phase is so good. When you're playing aggression, the last thing you want is your opponent playing a bunch of restore and undoing all of your hard work, and this is the only card that can prevent that from happening, and that's why he's on the list.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory on that one.
Yep. Another super self-explanatory card is Disabling Fang Fighter. Again, we have that magic number of 3 power, very good at trading into things, but when you play it, defeats an upgrade. Upgrades include experience tokens, shield tokens, and equipment or things that you put onto units. So oftentimes you put this in your sideboard to get rid of those pesky traitorous, from the command players who want to steal your units. You can just destroy their traitorous and say, "Oh, give me that guy back," right? So Disabling Fang Fighter can be a particularly good card into shields. If your opponent, you know that your opponent is playing a ton of shields, you can probably just play this guy, pop the shield. Now all of a sudden their guy feels a lot more naked, right? So it's a good card. Definitely belongs more in the sideboard because you don't want to play that into somebody who's not playing a bunch of upgrades, but definitely a card to consider.
Nice. And then force throw.
Now we're going to move over to the force throw, right? Yeah. So force throw is awesome. It is super cheap. It causes a player to discard a card. The relevance there is that you can choose yourself. So the random nature of you don't know what they're going to discard and what it's going to cost and how much damage it's going to deal. So if you control force unit, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the cost of the discarded card, right? So you do the initial effect. They choose a card. If they show you like a one drop, right? Like if they discard a Benefic 2 tubes, you're like, oh crap, right? Sometimes that's a bummer. So the ability to, in the end of the game, when maybe you have a lot of resources and a lot of cards in your hand, and you're just trying to get rid of something very pesky, sometimes you can just choose yourself and say, you know what? I have 2 of this very expensive card in my hand. This now just becomes uh, a force choke that doesn't allow your opponent to draw a card, right? If you discard, like an occupier siege tank, which you shouldn't be playing. Don't get me wrong, I don't particularly like that card, but I'm just as an example of like a 5 cost, right? You could just pitch that 5 cost card and throw 5 damage at something. So force throw, super good, very versatile. And then sometimes your opponent's in almost like a top deck mode, and you know that they're holding on to something, and just the ability to say, you know what, just discard it. Don't even worry about that card in your hand. Can really ruin some people's turns because they have that one card. They're going to play it next turn. It's the thing that they've been holding on to, and if you read them correctly and make them discard it, it can be very powerful.
Nice. Yeah, I've played this card a lot, and it is awesome.
Um, and then the most generic of generic cards is Open Fire. it's, it looks so empty. Just deal 4 damage to a unit. But direct damage is good, and that's why it belongs on this list because direct damage is good, always good. And it sort of sets a precedent. We now know what 4 damage should cost. And so when you're looking and evaluating other good cards in the game, you can kind of get a sense on like what does raid 2 mean in terms of cost of resources, right? What does a trigger or a ping of 1 cost, right? So it kind of gives you a sense of the game. So even though this is just a common card, it's a good one, and it's one that you need to think about if you see an aggression player playing across from you. Is that when your unit, gets traded into with a little guy and is sitting there at 4 health, you're gonna need to think about is he dead or not? And that's what open fire provides, is just that extra sense of it's a little bit of extra reach, which is what red sometimes needs in order to close out a game.
Yeah, and there you have it. That is all of the best, well, all of the good cards to name out and call out right now for aggression. And
Well, not all the good cards, but my favorite ones.
yeah, I'd say these are definitely ones that you need to have in your deck. And yeah, that's really it, guys. Um, Thank you so much for watching, and we'll get you into another video soon.
Thanks.